As we've just heard in today's gospel, Jesus famously gives us the two greatest commandments on which the whole law and the prophets depend. They are worth repeating. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, on the surface of this teaching, it may appear to us that there are two separate virtues of charity, one by which we love God, and the other by which we love our neighbor. However, this thinking is incorrect. There is only one virtue of charity by which we love God because he is infinitely lovable, and we love neighbor because faith teaches us to recognize in him a reflection of God. Therefore, the motive for loving our neighbor is in fact the same as the motive for loving God. In other words, by one virtue of charity, we either must always love God directly in himself or indirectly in our neighbor. And this truth of our faith is also found in the words of St. John the Apostle, who teaches us in his first letter, "If anyone says, 'I love God,' but hates his brother, he is a liar. For whoever does not love a brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. This is the commandment we have from him. Whoever loves God must also love his brother." Furthermore, the collect for today's Mass, that is the opening prayer for the 20th week of Ordinary Time, also contains this truth about charity. Just a few moments ago, we prayed, "O God, who have prepared for those who love you good things which no eye can see, fill our hearts with the warmth of your love, so that loving you in all things and above all things, we may attain your promises, which surpass every human desire." This prayer echoes the glorious words of St. Paul. "What eye has not seen, and ear has not heard, what has not entered the human heart, what God has prepared for those who love him." Therefore, when we set our hearts upon God and we love him in all things, as in our neighbor, and above all things, we attain for ourselves what God has prepared for us, which is, of course, a personal dwelling place in his heavenly kingdom. However, in order to love God with proper charity, we must do as Jesus has taught us and learn to love our neighbor as ourself. This means that we must love our neighbor as he is, in spite of all his faults or any annoyances he may sometimes cause us. If I only love my neighbor because he is kind, or because he renders me some sort of service, or because I enjoy his friendship, then my love is merely human, and it is not the love of the theological virtue of charity. It can be very easy to deceive ourselves and to think that we have charity because we love those who love us. But remember, Jesus also tells us, "If you love those who love you, what recompense will you have? Do not the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brothers only, what is unusual about that? Do not the pagans do the same?" Friends, possessing the virtue of charity means to love our neighbor for God and because of God. Our love becomes true charity only to the degree in which the love of God enters into it. That is, when we think of our neighbor in relation to God, a human being made in his image and likeness, and created to share in God's goodness, to participate in his divine life, and to enjoy his glory forever in heaven. When we love in this way, when we see the divine image in our neighbor, then our acts of love will be true charity, and thus they will be one in the same act by which we love God. Thus again we can say, there is only one virtue of charity by which we love both God and neighbor. To conclude, I'll leave you with the words from a great saint, and asking the question, why should we love our neighbor? St. Francis de Sales responds, "For love of you, O Lord, who created him to your image and likeness, and made him capable in participating in your goodness, grace, and glory. Therefore, O love divine, you have not only commanded us many times to love our neighbor, but you yourself instill this love in our hearts.